Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, April 11th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. So today we have a great number of feasts. We have, starting here with the Abbot Orsini, who tells us that they celebrate today Our Lady of Fourvière. There's no date mentioned, so when this devotion actually started is unclear. But it's said that Saint Pothinus erected the first oratory where Mary was invoked in Gaul, which is now France, right? This is according to the tradition of the city of Lyon, which is supported by a document, a bull, by Pope Innocent IV, right? It said that he brought all the way from Asia a small statue of the Blessed Virgin, which he left in a little crypt on the banks of the Saône River in front of the hill of Fourvière, right? And so it's because of that reason that this little spot, which eventually was built into was taken into a church built on the hill itself, got its name Our Lady of Fourvière. So many people have come there. Of course, during the Reformation, the church was ravaged, and during the Revolution of 1793, the Church of Fourvière was sold, right? But finally, when calm and peace were restored, a priest who was in charge of the ancient church of Pothinus and Irenaeus was able to purchase the Sanctuary of Mary and wanted it to be restored as the Shrine of Our Lady of Fourvière. So the inauguration of that church was performed on April 19th, 1805 by the Sovereign Pontiff Pius VII, right? It was both in 1832 and 1835 that the city of Lyon was threatened with cholera, and they lifted up their hearts in prayer to the Mount of Fourvière. And very poetically, the Abbot Orsini says, the Blessed Virgin said to the scourge, "Thou shalt go no further," or farther, right? And so that saved the city of Lyon from further suffering. They also recount a very wonderful story in the year 1815. They say there was an unusual sort of pilgrim, right, who was Marshal Suchet. He was the marshal of the empire, but also a child of Lyon, right? He was in charge of defending his native city, but they were surprised to see him there in the church. And he said, quite nicely, he said, "When I was a child, my pious and good mother often brought me here to the feet of Our Lady, and this I still remember. I will say more, this recollection is dear to me, and I have never lost it," right? Which is very, very beautiful. Likewise, and my assistant here has very kindly said, good luck pronouncing the name, Ons leven wou van de alte Gedurden, Beenstaan, Galar, Geist op den Berg, Antwerp, Belgium. So, yeah, good luck pronouncing that. Hopefully you can make out what it is. It's a church in Antwerp, Belgium. It was April 11th of 1502 when the Holy Cross Parish in Haller canceled its annual procession because the weather was too bad. But the next day, when the priest and his assistant went to the church, they found muddy tracks going in and out of the church, and Our Lady's white robes were splattered with mud. So word got out that Our Lady had made the procession all by herself, and that drew pilgrims to the church, which has processed the statue near this date ever since, except when the French closed the church, right? Now it's known as the parish of Our Dear Lady of Perpetual Help. In recent years, they've held a 3-day celebration on the first weekend in April, with the procession on Sunday. Now we also have another interesting Marian devotion that comes to us actually from Cambodia. It's Our Lady of the Mekong in Akri Xaster Lavirem Kandal, Cambodia. Cambodia, yeah. I guess I'm probably striking out on all these pronunciations today. It happened that a group of fishermen found a statue of Our Lady of Lourdes in the deep, muddy waters near the shores of the Mekong River, right? On the afternoon of April 11th, 8 men of Cham origin, they were Muslims, found a cast iron statue entangled in their fishing nets. But this was a huge statue, right? It weighed 160 kilos, which is, if my math serves me, that's got to be over 300 pounds, and was 1.5 meters in height. So that'd be like, 4.5, 5 feet. They said that it had been in the river at least 33 years since the beginning of the regime of Khmer Rouge, right? So what happened? Well, one of the villagers reported to a Catholic woman named Chenna, okay, we found this statue. And after she investigated, she told them to talk to the Queen of Peace Pastoral Council. And so the council agreed to give the fishermen some 2 million real, which is about $500 in exchange for the statue, right? But that's not where the story ends. That night, between 8 and 9 in the evening, as the Vietnamese fishermen were asleep in the boat, one of them had a vision of Our Lady that looked like the statue, and it was flying over them several times. So he panicked and he told the other fishermen, he said, I think that's a bad omen, right? So the next day they went back to the church, knelt in front of the statue, and asked for peace and happiness in their lives. They met with the council and gave them their money back. But the council, knowing how poor they were, decided to use it to supply them regularly with food, right? Likewise, a second statue was found in the Mekong riverbed. And it's an interesting story. This is on the night of November 18th, 2012. Phang Vang Hu, a Vietnamese fisherman, had a dream. And in his dream, he saw a big figure of a man asking him, please lift me out of the water because I'm very cold. I've been here in the Mekong for so long. I'm not far from where Our Lady was found. Please help me. Right? So the next day, he went to a coffee shop close by and told the owner, who was Catholic, he said, today I'm going to take Jesus out of the water. So he brought his 2 sons and instructed them to search for the statue. It was 12:38 in the afternoon, so just after noon, on November 19th, 2012, that the men hauled the statue of Mary carrying the child Jesus from the riverbed, right? And then about 50 young men helped carry the statue to the church, right? Even further, now we also have in Spain, Mare de Dios de Miracle in Relu, Alicante, Valencia, Spain. So this is a floral offering and procession which commemorate a miraculous rainfall in 1710, right? They were having a very difficult time because it was a long drought in Relu, and the crops were going to be lost. They made many prayers to certain saints, but without any sort of help, right? There was no rain. So it was the rector of the church in Relu, Dr. de Jose Celes, and he was very devoted to Our Lady of the Miracle, the patroness of the town where he was born, right? And so he had this inspiration to offer the town an image that was a painted copy of that image that he had in his house, right? So they took that image in procession, and on the last day of the novena, which was April 11th, 1710, as they were bringing out the image to take it back to the parish, they noticed that there was, it was as if a slight cloud ascended above the sea and headed in the town's direction. And it was, in fact, full of water. So it rained, and then they restored the crops, and it was very good. And because of that, the town proclaimed Our Lady the patroness of the village, and they said that they would always continue celebrating on that day, right? Later in 1812, the town once again invoked her intercession to defend them from cholera, and in 1995, she was proclaimed the perpetual mayor of the town. And then last but not least, we've got so many feasts today. We have Madonna delle Vergini in Macerata in Italy, right? So this is the feast of the first miracle of our Madonna delle Vergini, Our Lady of the Virgins, right? So it's said that in 1548, Our Lady appeared to a small girl by the name of Bernardina and asked her to convey to the citizens that on Saturday, they should have a procession of di fanciulle, of little girls, in reparation for all the scandals that were taking place in the city, right? The beautiful image of Our Lady of the Virgins was painted in 1553, and immediately after, because of the many miracles, she became quite loved and venerated in that town. So that is what we're celebrating in the Marian world today, April 11th. For today's Marian meditation, we'll read the conclusion of Meditation 54. This is again taken from Father Ildefonso Villar's book, Marian Meditations. And this fourth point, prayer in common, concludes this meditation. Not only Mary, but all the others who dwelt in Nazareth used to pray both in private and in common. What a sublime sight, that of the Holy Family at prayer. How pleased God is with prayer said in the home, with family prayer, with prayer said together. Jesus himself, after having practiced it at Nazareth, later taught it to his disciples, advising them, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them." Man is by nature sociable. He needs company. He must live in a family, in a society. Whatever his achievements, they must be done with the cooperation of others. Why should we through prayer not sanctify this life of society? If you have friends with whom you deal, with whom you talk, why not help one another to join God? If union is strength, if united we stand, if man joins other men in order to achieve some purpose, if single-handedly we can do little, if divided we fall, why should we not follow the same lines in the matters of the Spirit? See how the Church promotes prayer and spiritual life in common. Religious congregations are just an application of this same principle. Try to follow these lines and spread prayer and spiritual life in the family, in the circle of your friends, in the society around you. So for today's reading from The Admirable Heart of Mary by St. John Eudes, we'll read the conclusion of Chapter 3, Examples of Saints and Religious Orders, and by this he means that we're particularly devoted to the Admirable Heart of Mary. Yesterday he talked at length at the priest for the Congregation of Jesus and Mary, of which he was a founder. Let's read this conclusion. As for the religious of Our Lady of Charity, their very great obligations to the most holy heart of the all-glorious Virgin shall certainly prevent anyone from surpassing them in the love they owe to her heart, after the heart of Jesus, the most lovable, loving, and loved of all hearts. They dwell in an order which originated at the same time as the Congregation of Jesus and Mary, and is likewise entirely consecrated to the admirable heart of the Mother of Fair Love. In token of this, the sisters wear a silver heart bearing an image of the Mother of our Savior, and are called religious of Our Lady of Charity, because they have been founded to work for the salvation of derelict souls, and salvation is the greatest object of the charity that abounds in Mary's heart. They should think most highly of their religious vocation, and follow with the greatest care and affection the devotional exercises of their holy institute. They should often consider the very ardent love of Mary's heart for the souls redeemed by the most precious blood of her divine Son, so that their own hearts may experience the sacred fire of charity with which they ought to exert themselves in the task of saving the souls entrusted to them by divine providence. This chapter has presented a large number of saints and religious orders who belong very specially to the most august heart of the Queen of Saints. Through their example, the Holy Ghost preaches eloquently the devotion to the Holy Heart of Mary. Let us offer to her admirable heart the honor rendered to it by all these saints and holy persons, and cultivate an ardent desire to imitate their zeal and ardor. Let us beg them to make us sharers in their devotion, and to associate us in the glory and praise that is rendered to the most powerful and merciful Queen of all Christian hearts that love Almighty God.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.